Hello, my name is Emily, Iannelli. You know who I am by now. And I'm talking today about something very special. Actually, today is Christmas Eve. And I'm playing some Christmas music in the background, actually, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is one of my favorites. Every year I go with my son to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra perform their Christmas show at the Nassau Coliseum. I've been going with my son for many years now, and the reason Trans-Siberian Orchestra is so special is because the day my wife gave birth to Maddie, our son, I was blasting Trans-Siberian Orchestra in my car when I would go back and forth between home and Mercy Hospital, where my son and my wife gave birth to our son. So that was a very special time in my life, and the music was Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I remember Christmas Eve in Sarajevo, all the songs, and when I go to the concert it just brings me back to that wonderful day in my life when our son was born. And I've been going every year with my son, and this year he happens to be in the hospital. So it was, I was lucky enough to have two wonderful guy friends of mine to accompany me at the orchestra, Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert at the Coliseum. But deep down in my heart I was yearning for my son because he's in the hospital. I haven't gotten to see him when he was transferred recently from South Oaks to Sagamore. So we're hoping that we get to spend at least Christmas Day with Maddie. I mean, I have some Christmas presents for him, but Christmas isn't going to be the same this year, obviously, because Maddie's in the hospital and my wife didn't have the Christmas spirit to put up a tree this year. So this will be the very first year that we don't have a Christmas tree. My wife usually puts lights out on the outside of the house, and we don't have that. So, for us, Christmas is not really Christmas because our son isn't home. And it looks like he's going to be in the hospital for quite some time. So it's very sad to us that we are not able to see him or have Christmas together. It's very emotional. When you have a child who's sick, it's very upsetting, but ultimately Maddie needs help, and we need to be behind him fully and get him the help he desperately needs. Today is Christmas Eve, and tomorrow's Christmas, and I can't really get into the holiday really, but I am going shopping, buying little presents for my son, but I'm on a budget. And I also have this affinity to women's clothes, so I've been going to Target, and when I see a dress I like, I buy it. It's just the way I am. I can't help it. But I'm also, I got my son some nice clothes, and I got I'm gonna buy him a sketch pad with a color pencil set because he likes to draw, and I definitely want to encourage that in him. My father was an artist. I wish I was an artist, but I think that I'm coming around in my own talents. Like, I love to do videos, I love to write, and I'm reaching out to people, celebrities even, like musicians. Actually, I'm going up to Canada, Toronto, for New Year's Eve to see Dream Aria, a group that I became friends with on MySpace, and they're based in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm actually going to have the privilege of meeting with them, and I'm actually looking forward to it. And I've made friends with other music groups. I saw Selena Garcia in concert, and I actually got to speak to her, and that was awesome. It just feels good when you reach out and you get the acknowledgement. And I don't know if it's me as Emily or what, but I know when I was living as a male, I wasn't outgoing. I was very closed in. I was shy. But as I've developed into female, transitioning, I feel more empowered. I feel much more happier. more comfortable, even though we're going through all of these setbacks. I'm not at work, I'm on disability, I'm not able to work. My son's in the hospital. I was in the hospital 4 times. I was in Bellevue Hospital, where I was there for 10 days. I was in Nassau University Medical Center twice, and I go to Beth Israel for aftercare treatment, and I was even admitted there for an overdose attempt. So, you know, my life hasn't been rosy, peachy keen. I've been going through some difficult struggles, and I hate to say it, but I attempted suicide also, and I'm the really sad thing about it is that I have a wife and a son who I care very much for. The problem is that we are facing possible foreclosure, and if we were forced out into the street, that we lost our house because we couldn't pay the mortgage, logically my instinct is to protect my family. And the only true way I know how to protect my family is through my life insurance. And I know about the 2-year suicide clause. I'm very well read up on it and did research on it. So my depression is really leading me to these thoughts of suicide, that it could be construed that I had died because of a severe depression that overcame me and led me to my death. The life insurance policies I have clearly state that if I own the policy for more than 2 years, that my beneficiaries would receive my monies. But I really don't want to go in that direction, to be honest with you. That would be as a cry of desperation. If things got so bad that we were forced to leave our house and had to live in the street in the wintertime, we wouldn't be able to survive. So the only way I could protect my family is to sacrifice my own life. And I've come so far as Emily that it would be such a tragedy to only end it in the end because of financial crisis. And I'm happy as Emily. I can do things as Emily. I mean, I would love to get into fashion. I would love to continue with my blogging and writing and reaching out to musicians. Who knows, maybe I could be a publicist for a music group. I mean, musicians touch me in many ways. And Dream Aria is such a nice group, and they are always in touch with me, and that makes me feel so good. And I'm also friends with Selena Garcia. I'm friends with the Accidentals. I'm friends with a group in Australia called Chasing Aces. These are groups from all over the world that I've become friends with through Reverb Nation. And I'm just so happy to be a part of these groups, and also MySpace. So I think it's wonderful. And the more things start to settle down, hopefully I'll catch up on my mortgage delinquency, and I'll start to have more stability with my disability monies. And now that I'm on Social Security disability, my son Matty will be also entitled to it because he's under the age of 18, and he's also autistic. So if anybody needs to be on the disability, my son certainly does. I have my favorite music for Christmas playing, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I saw them in concert just this past Friday, and it was amazing. These musicians are unbelievable. They're full of energy. They do a remarkable show. It's non-stop action, and they play all their songs that I just love. And it's just phenomenal when you see these music artists perform live. It's incredible. When I saw Selena Garcia perform live, her venue was much smaller, but it was in an intimate setting, and it was in the city in one of those little bar places that are geared towards musicians who are displaying their talents to hopefully get noticed. And most definitely Selena should be noticed, and she should get a record label. And whatever I could do, I would definitely do for her, because I really love the girl. She's a sweetheart. And we had a nice conversation back after she performed, and what can I say? She's such a sweet person, down to earth, She's very kind. She's working hard, she's got to make a living, but she also loves music. And she's come from a background too of difficulty, like I have. And that's why I have a bond with her. She said she went to Al Anon also, which I did. My dad was suffering because of his job and the pressures and demands. So unfortunately, he succumbed to alcoholism. So I know it very well, and Selena seems to have been touched by it. I don't really know the extent of the story regarding it, but I do remember her saying that music is what helps her get through all of her difficulties. So I know she has been there, and she knows exactly what it's like to have a loved one who struggles like that. And I just felt that she was so sweet, so sincere, and such a wonderful person that she touched my heart. And I wanted to show her that I really care about her. And I got her a few little presents, and I wanted to acknowledge her music and how wonderful she was. She was truly wonderful. And I would love to go see her again. And I would love to see the Accidentals perform. And they sent a beautiful CD to my son, which I did a video about. And from what I understand, they may be coming to perform in New York in February. So I would love to go see the Accidentals also. And now Dream Aria, I'm driving up to Toronto. I just mapped it out. It's about a good 9 to 10 hour drive. So it should be an exciting trip. And also to have them know that they should be expecting me is awesome, because they're gonna have me have a dinner with them and all before they do their music performance. They do their sound checks and they're on stage testing. I would love to be part of that musician's lifestyle. I was never one for creating music, but I always appreciated music, and I appreciated the artists who perform that music. To me, music is what helped me get through difficult times in my life. I've been a fan of music since I was just a little boy, and I remember one of the first music groups that I heard, believe it or not, was the Mamas and the Papas. And my mother would sing that. And also the group Peter, Paul and Mary. I loved their folk music. And the Beatles, of course. I'll never forget, I was like 4 years old and I saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show. And they were just like unbelievable. So I've been influenced by music all my life. But I never had the talent to perform, and I probably would have loved to have honed in on that, but I never picked up a guitar. I never gravitated to that, and I was never one for singing. So I guess it just wasn't in me, but the music itself was part of my soul, and I loved it, and I listened to it and absorbed it. And maybe, who knows, maybe I can get into writing for music bands if I could just develop that kind of, that there's a talent involved in writing songs. I mean, I write a blog, but writing a blog is about my personal life. It's about my story, which I hope one day to put into a book format, to tell what life is like to be transgender, to be suffering from depression since a early age, knowing that I identified as a girl at the age of 4, to feel awkward and not able to talk to girls, but having crushes on them, to find my peace by going to push myself in sports. I had a wonderful coach in high school that saved my life and got me into cross-country running. I was a baseball player in my youth in Little League, and I was a good athlete. I was fortunate. So that was my way of coping and being able to get through life as a boy, was because I was good in sports and I was accepted. So I really was not one of those boys that was made fun of because nobody knew my situation. I didn't outwardly express my girly side. but I always dressed with girls' clothes, but I always wore boys' clothes over them. So in essence, I was hiding who I truly was, never opening up, never revealing it to anyone. And I did this basically all my life. I knew at 4, and I didn't even come out till I was 51. I tried to come out unsuccessfully in my 30s after my mom passed away a few years earlier, but it wasn't successful. I came out to 3 people, my 2 sisters and one of my college friends, one of my best friends actually, and it really went nowhere. So, but I did, in the years, I tried to go to support groups. I went to Connecticut, I went to Virginia, I went to a gender identity clinic. I really knew what was going on, and I knew I had to address it. I went to a therapist to talk about my transgender. So, it's not like I wasn't trying earlier, but the times weren't right. My family had their problems. My mother was struggling with depression, and she had a lot of illnesses that we don't fully understand. But I knew she had manic depression. She suffered from paranoia, schizophrenia, so she was in the hospital in and out on a regular basis, sadly. And she was a beautiful woman, a wonderful mother, and very dedicated to the marriage. But unfortunately, she fell victim to depression, and she worried about bills and finances, and the fact that my dad had a problem with dealing with tragedy and resorted to drinking didn't help the situation. It actually lended fuel to the fire, which made it worse. So, our life, though we had a good childhood, we were raised by wonderful parents, and we were given everything, and even my college was paid for by my parents. I took out, 1 or 2 student loans, which really didn't amount to a lot because my parents backed me up fully, and that's the same I want to do for my son. But, it was difficult because my dad was in the hospital for depression and also for physical injuries, suffered on the job as an iron worker. My mom was in the hospital for her own issues, and we were growing up quick. Our childhood was basically to grow up as quickly as possible because our parents struggled. I was like a teenager. I was 15, 16 when my mom wound up in the hospital and then continued on an ongoing basis. So I was 16 and my coach approached me in the cafeteria of all places, and I was going through a tough time, and I was contemplating suicide by overdosing, and for some reason it was like a guardian angel looking over me, and he just came up to me out of nowhere, and he told me that he wanted me to be a part of his cross-country team. And I was like amazed because I never really felt part of anything. I was a very lonely person, and being a guy who wanted to desperately be female was not helping the situation. And I had crushes on girls, I'll be honest with you. I always admired women and girls, and I thought they were beautiful. But I also had this thing going on inside where I felt like a girl, and I had to express myself as a girl. So, it was like this thing that just kept persisting, and it came stronger and stronger. And as I got older, I thought it would diminish, but it actually intensified. But I had to put a clamp on it. And I used to go out and buy clothes. I was really surviving by dressing, and dressing was my safe haven. But the problem was that I would try every now and then to get rid of my desire to be female and to dress as a woman by taking all the clothes that I had bought and wore for years, and decided to try to rid myself of this by innocently thinking that if I put all my clothes into a bag, took it to the Salvation Army drop box, and disposed of them, but for goodwill, that I would be doing a good thing, and that I would be hopefully getting rid of my desires to become a female. But that was not what happened. What really happened then is I longed for wearing the clothes again, and now I didn't have them. The act that I did was called purging. Purging means that in hopes of getting rid of this need to dress and express your femininity and give in to the feelings that you have, that you're deeply inside, have this female that needs to be freed and liberated. And I was scared. I didn't know what to do. So I kind of just suppressed it. And the poor little girl that was fighting inside to come out was really being forced to be prisoned within the soul. And I don't know really how much to say about it, how to explain it, but I really was a female and I felt entrapped. But I was also going through a struggle and I didn't know what to do. So I logically felt the best thing to do was to hide it because I was afraid. I couldn't tell my father, and when my mom was with us, I couldn't tell her either. So I was fighting with this, I needed to be a woman, I needed to dress up. But I kept buying clothes, even when I purged. I wound up buying again, and I purged maybe 6 times until I finally learned my lesson that this is not going to stop. This is going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. And I knew one day I would have to face this difficult decision of having to transition. The main thing though is that I got to a point where I didn't want to be alone either. So I was going to a therapist originally to address my transgender issues, and I wanted at that time to actually undergo the treatments to properly transition to be a female, and this was in my early 30s. And I was seeing the therapist from my early 30s to my mid 30s, and after many visits over the years, we talked about my transgender, we talked about my family life, we talked about the heartbreak, the tragedies, we talked about my inability to relate to girls on a purely romantic level. Even though I was drawn to them and attracted to them, I wasn't sure how I could have really relations with them if I identified as a girl myself. And I was afraid to tell anybody. So it wasn't like I was expressive of who I was. I couldn't tell anybody, and the only people I did tell was through a quick letter addressed to my 2 sisters and my best friend from college. And it went nowhere. I mean, they got the letter, they acknowledged it, they read it, they were shocked. They couldn't believe it, but, they said they were here for me. But it didn't go anywhere because I never got to pursue it. I never got to actually feel comfortable relating it to people, to them, to anyone. So it got buried again within me, and I locked it up again. And it was just my cross-dressing that got me through. And I cross-dressed frequently, but I realized that the purging had to stop. So I stopped purging, and I acquired another wardrobe, and I must have had so much in clothes that I can't even imagine how much it cost me over the years. But I needed to wear dresses. I was 4 years old when I tried on my very first dress, which was my sister's dress that was hanging by the oil burner because the delicate fabric. So my mother would line up my sister's dresses because they were much more delicate than my shirts and pants that she could throw right into the dryer. But for girls' clothes, they are extra delicate. So I happened to come upon one of these dresses that was hanging on a hanger by the oil tank, the oil burner, and I just had to have that dress. I felt so drawn to it, and I wanted to put it on and feel like what I'm going through. And it was my safe haven. It was my way of coping and dealing with my feelings of being a girl, because I knew when I was 4 years old that I was going to live with this for the rest of my life. So it was something I just knew internally, and I knew it as young as 4. But I just didn't know how to address it other than to just go with the flow. And going with the flow meant to dress up and express that female side of me, and I did it in secrecy. I didn't tell a soul. I was living in the closet for virtually a lifetime. I didn't come out. I didn't actually physically come out, and I came out in a big way. I came out on my Facebook, on my Twitter, on MySpace. I came out on all the social medias that I was involved with at the time. And I just had no choice. I just had it, I had to do it. I even did videos on my female gender identity. And, I wasn't ashamed anymore. I have a blog. I wrote in my blog about it. So it came to a point, and I was in my 50s at the time. I actually hit the 50 mark. My dad had died tragically a few years earlier by suicide. My mom was gone many, many years. And I was struggling, I was really struggling. And I was actually married at the time, because going through the therapy, I managed to meet a girl through my therapist. And we hit it off, a nice young girl from the Philippines who I had feelings for. And I was deathly afraid to tell her, so I never did. And in a way, it came back to haunt me, because she was very upset when she finally realized what was going on with me. But it wasn't my intention to keep it a secret. It's just that was my protective mechanism. I was afraid to tell anybody. It wasn't just her. I couldn't tell family. I couldn't tell friends. I couldn't tell anybody. And then I told my coworkers and my employer, and it wound up me losing my job. And I suffered a nervous breakdown in the process. And I just had so many painful struggles, and I wound up in a psychiatric hospital 4 times. I almost committed suicide. I have a son who's autistic, and he's a teenager, and he's going through his own struggles. So it wasn't pretty, It was a very difficult time, and I could have taken my life. Many transgenders unfortunately fall victim to depression and ultimately to suicide if they completely fall apart. They lose their family as a source of support. They lose their jobs, so now they have no income. They have to be forced to find some form of housing assistance. They're treated like second class. They're not respected. They have difficulty re-entering the job force due to the societal pressures and discrimination and misunderstanding by society. So the life of a transgender is a very difficult life, and we struggle daily. So I'm trying to do my part as an advocate for my son as an autistic child, and for my struggles as a transgender. I was a transgender child, and today transgender children are much more fortunate, because we're starting to live in a society where things are somewhat changing, and people are understanding that this is a medical issue, that there are children struggling with gender identity, and that they are going through difficult times, and they are coming out to their parents or their people that they can open up to and trust. So, we've come a distance. We're making progress. And with interviews like Barbara Walters, when she's interviewed Jazz, I should say her name is, Jazz, who's a young girl who's transitioning and was like 8 or 9 when she knew. And it's like very common nowadays that 7, 8, 9-year-olds are transitioning, boys transitioning to become girls. So we are making progress.